Hey, how you doing? Just going home. The weather has now warmed up into the balmy mid-30s. Woo, tropical weather. And so I think the threat of the freezy stuff is over, except for, a couple of slick, slushy spots. And I got my coffee. Coffee. Highly recommend Sister Anne's Americano with a little bit of honey and cream. That doesn't sound to be too much of a douchey drink. Like the times when I'm traveling and Starbucks is all I can find, the drink of choice is a pour over dark with sugar-free cinnamon dolce and a little bit of cream. And I tell you, that is kind of a douchey drink. There's a lot of times that people at Starbucks say, we're kind of busy. We just put fresh coffee in our urn. We have dark that's not pour over. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine, as long as it's fresh. Because I've gone places. It looks like it's got a generator in it. A stealth camper. A Dodge ProMaster. But I've had it where, they poured it out of the urn. It's been sitting way too long. I don't know if it's so much a Starbucks thing, though. I think they're a little more careful than that. Sort of the topic of conversation, for me at least, is how much Jim, with his long hair and beard and sunglasses, looks a lot like Widowmaker from a distance. I don't know if you know. Hello. I don't know if anybody knows who Widowmaker is. The other part of the conversation I was walking out was people were saying that how people are being callous about the beer flu and saying that they don't care, that it's it's not going to affect anybody that they know, and so they're not taking. To that, I was thinking, man, if you could take some of these health department officials and bureaucrats and get some truth serum in them, or get a few beers in them, and ask them what are they really afraid of, they're going to tell you, we're not really afraid of what the beer flu could do. We pretty much know what it could do. We're afraid of it mutating into something worse, which is why, if you've ever heard, they've been tracking mutations very carefully. Or they're afraid that something worse would come out. Like, I don't know if people are aware, I think some of the strains of bird flu are deadly. Like, if the wild, it would have a 60% casualty rate. 60%, that means 6 out of 10 people who get it will die. And that would be apocalyptic. I don't even know if a nuclear war would demolish. You want to talk about Stephen King and The Stand? And some of these things do exist, and so I think one of the worst pandemics that ever hit, maybe in the 1300s. And it was bubonic. One of the strains of bubonic plague took out 60% of the population of Europe. Which is why, if you ever travel to Europe, you can go places in Europe and see areas where a village used to be, and the only sturdy building that's left standing, which is usually the church, is like a church in the middle of a field. So, I think that if people need a motivation to do the right thing and socially distance and wear masks and wash your hands and do the few things they have to do to try and keep it from spreading, they should. Because we're not talking about people we don't even know dying, so why should we care? I mean, we should care about that. We're talking about something that could get serious very fast. That's why you don't want to let pandemics run wild. And I don't know about everywhere else. I think Kansas City has been doing pretty well with it. A lot of Kansas Cityans are doing what they should. It's like the rural areas of Missouri and rural. In fact, a lot of the counties in Kansas, Kansas has a Democratic governor, Laura Kelly, and the counties in Kansas are red Republican, and she put out an order saying that everybody in Kansas must wear masks and socially distance, and we're gonna try and shut a lot of things down. And they just stood up to her and said no through the legislature, and so of course, and so she's like, okay, these are only recommendations, and I highly advise you to do it. And they said, well, screw you, we're not going to listen to you. It's all a plot. It's not real. Well, Kansas is one of the states that's had extreme of the pandemic, and Missouri has a Republican governor and has had a Republican legislature forever. So of course, the cities have done well. The two big cities, Kansas City and St. Louis. The counties have done horrible. The rural areas. And again, it's sort of the same thing, except they don't have a governor saying, we will, you must, we recommend. We've had a governor who walked around without a mask on, didn't take any precautions, and and the funny thing, he and his wife both caught it. And after that, they toned down their rhetoric and said, these people are not fooling around. This is not made up. This is real. Because the beer flu does not care who you are, what party you belong to, what your politics are, what your religion is, what your race is. The beer flu is all about spreading and replicating itself. Why did we call it the beer flu? Because the YouTube robot thinks that the advertisers would be upset if we talked about if I go around Belton, Missouri. I'd like to try and make it out there. Let me see if I could talk my missus into are there any good antique stores down there? Because we usually like to go get away from things and do little day trips and antiquing. Of course, the aforementioned beer flu has kind of cooled that down a bit, and us having 3 young children, it's not so easy for us to get around. It's not generally in my circuit or my route, but I've spent some time in Belton. I had one time volunteered for the for the railroad down there. They used to call themselves Smoky Hill. I forget what they call themselves now. Which the railroad actually got its start up here, where I'm at right now at this moment, speaking of which, here in the River Key area. They used to be at the end of this road. And they moved down to Belton. I think partly because there was tracks that were abandoned. They had a nice area they could set up in, and they could operate their own trains on their own line, which I think that was sort of what they were after. But that was back in 1992, and as a matter of fact, I have some videos I shot back then. I don't know what to look under, on my YouTube page, Svoboda KC, which is what this is being broadcast on. Plug. Oh, there's a few more people out today. And when I worked as a photographer, used to go to Belton. The most I can remember we went down there for was because of Kara Kopetsky and her family. They were really, really media savvy. And they would say, hey, it's the anniversary of her disappearance. We're still looking for her. And they had good relations with a lot of reporters. And so we would go down there quite a bit to talk to them. Which is always sad. And they really had a lot of... how would you say? They had a lot of poise and class in the way they dealt with the situation. And it's too bad that she was her body was eventually found. I mean, it's good that they got closure, but that doesn't make it easy. I mean, you want your family member back that you miss. You don't want to know where and how she died. And horrible situation, horrible person. I hope he gets the help he needs, apparently, because he seems like he and his some other members of his family have some issues. Can't remember his name, which I guess it's a good thing, because too often we remember the names of the murderers. We don't remember the name of their victims. Oh, the sun is coming out. This might actually turn out to be a pretty day. Temperature gauge on my car thermometer says 37 degrees. And actually, I would like to try and travel, do more day trips out to some of these more outlying areas. Maybe go down the Jefferson Highway again and talk about that live, as long as my internet will hold up, because you get into rural areas and then you find you don't have any service. You go down Jefferson, Harrisonville. I cut through Lee's Summit, places like that. Head over to Blue Springs. We do make it out there every so often. Next time I go through there. Actually, we were there right before Christmas. We went to Brass Armadillo. But was I live streaming then? Yeah, the funny thing is, the purpose of my... oh, that's funny. None ya business. None ya business. That's our response to our kids all the time. They're always like, "What are you doing? What's that? What?" Blah, 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 blah. And we say "Nunya." So their favorite thing to say now is "Nunya." Anyway, I was gonna say the reason I started live streaming is this is because I've been using my iPhone as a dash camera. I always run a dash camera in case something happens. And this live stream actually will record video as I'm live streaming. So I'm like, I might as well, as long as my internet holds out, and share this beautiful world, this beautiful corner of the world with anybody who might be interested in seeing it. There's a place I like to go out in Topeka too that I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm not fond of Topeka. I mean, there's some things that are nice about Topeka, but there are a lot of things that aren't so nice. So I don't make it out there. What neighborhood is that? I forget the name of the neighborhood, but there's a neighborhood northeast of downtown. It's a very, very, very Hispanic neighborhood. It's rich in culture, and the food is good, and the people are pretty nice, and I like that area. What about Herman? That's a bit far out. I've been there a couple of times. I like going through those roads that are out there, not the main highways, but like I can't think. I know one of them is 100, but I think that may be east of Herman. I like taking those. Ooh, it's kind of slippery through here. I like taking those roads. They're very pretty, nice scenic drive. I would love to make it out there. Not in the snowy kind of stuff, but in the springtime, it's beautiful. I know Herman is famous for its Oktoberfest in the Herman town. Missouri has a interesting history of German immigrants coming to Missouri, and you know, one time you can come into Missouri and English was like a second language in some places because German was a primary language. During the Civil War, there's a town out that direction east of Columbia named Kingdom City. Actually, Kingdom City came up at Fulton, Missouri. And Fulton and Callaway County are famous for they didn't want the Confederates nor the Union troops coming through their county, so they negotiated with them to stay out. There's nothing here. We don't want you guys. We don't want to be a part of your war. Just leave us alone. And so they kind of became known as the Kingdom of Callaway because they negotiated like they were an independent nation. We just went through North Kansas City. Now we're we're back in Kansas City, which is Kansas City, Missouri, but we refer to it as Kansas City North. And then there's a smaller town called North Kansas City, and it just I keep joking that it's really, really confusing. It's part of the quirks of our area. But all this land up here was annexed about 1964 by the city of, because south of the river, with all the rental properties and the crime going through the roof and the school districts going bad, their tax base was disappearing. So they wanted to annex more suburban land, and not die off as a city, kind of the way Detroit has sort of died off. And unfortunately, when they did that, they forgot that they needed to do things like put street lights in, the sewer system, sidewalks. There are many areas up here still that don't have sidewalks. A lot of people that run on rural water or septic systems, and not adequate street lights. But I'm sure that when in 1964, then they said, we're annexing you, not a lot of people had any. And what was that? The city manager, I thought he was a mayor at one time. There's a road up here named after him, L.P. Cookingham. I think it's L.P. He's the city manager at that time, and he's the one that pushed that. And there were a lot of cities that were up here, like Gladstone, places like that, that when Kansas City took over all the areas around them, it meant that they could not grow, they could not annex the property around them. So they're sort of landlocked. They can't take over parts of Kansas City. I don't know the legalities of that, if people could just decide, oh, we don't want to be a part of Kansas City anymore. I think that's really hard to do, though, because what services the city does provide up here, it kind of, we have city water and city sewer and everything else like that. And if somebody were to come in and say, well, you're now a part of Gladstone, well, then that would mean that Gladstone is using Kansas City's infrastructure. But I don't know, don't quote me on that, but we might even be part of North Kansas City's infrastructure. I know our school district is North Kansas City. But the city we live in is Kansas City. We're up by the Baptist Seminary, which owns a lot of land up here, up by Vivian Road and North Oak Traffic Way. Excuse me. We're talking about the Jefferson Highway, which existed from 1915 till about 1926. Well, we are on it. This is part of the Jefferson Highway. The Jefferson Highway is what's known as an auto trail. They existed before they numbered all the routes. Before they came up with the U.S. routes and the interstates, long before the interstates. The interstates didn't come in until the 1950s. The numbered routes, like Route 66. Up here, it's the two major routes would be 69 and 169. Which took over from the Jefferson Highway, and then eventually, when the interstate came in, it was I-35. I need more of my coffee. Oops. I have just crossed over into Gladstone, or Happy Rock. But actually on this side of the road, I'm in, I don't know, what's the name of this city? There's like these cities that are like no bigger than neighborhoods. I think there's a sign up here. Yeah, here we go. Not a city. But the funny thing is, people say that they didn't even know there was a town here, and they come speeding through here and a cop pulls them over, gives them a ticket. So they go to pay their ticket, and they have to report to like this little town hall, which is actually a house. And they're thinking, is this a scam or what? They're like, no, they're actually these 3 or 4 little cities here. What is this, a different one? Oakwood Park. Is that a different little town? I don't even know what the names are. I think there's about 3 of them, and then you're in Gladstone. But just to the west here, across the street, is Gladstone. From Inglewood north. And I think we're done with those little funny little villages, and now we're in Gladstone, maybe. I don't know. I mean, there's like these little villages, and literally they're just a couple of blocks long. That may have these villages are old, or pretty old, I think, and they may have to do with the Jefferson Highway and the fact that before there was the Jefferson Highway, there was a train line, Avondale, and went to St. Joseph and Excelsior Springs, and it ran what they called a doodlebug, which was a gas-powered. It was like a bus on rails, like a little heavier duty than a bus. And people used to be able to board that thing and go visit Excelsior Springs or go up to St. Joseph and back. It was actually kind of nice. But, you know, when automobiles took over, they couldn't make any money off of it, so they shut it down and tore up the rails. And that ran. Villages that exist here existed because they were stops on the line, like I think Oakwood, and you know, at the time the town we're in, Gladstone, wasn't called Gladstone, it was called Linden, and the line ran right on the east side of Linden, and then north from there it hit a little village called and west of there was Barry, which Barry Road is named after. And Barry at one time was as far west as you could go in the United States back in the 1830s. Barry was the frontier, and then north of there is Nashua, and then you hit Smithville. I'm not sure if there's any. I don't think there's anything between Smithville and Nashua. And the Jefferson Highway, when it took over, kind of took a similar path to the railroad, which is very common. The old auto trails and roads would follow the grades set out by railroad engineers because they usually knew what they were doing. They found the best path, least resistance. And sometimes the old roads would be built on top of the old railroad grades, like the ASB Bridge across the Missouri River was where the Jefferson Highway crossed. And ASB Bridge was a double-decker bridge. The lower deck is trains, and the upper deck was, when it was built, was meant for pedestrians and horse carts and things like that, but eventually became an automobile bridge, and was really, really scary when they replaced it in the 1980s with the Heart of America Bridge. I sort of remember the old ASB Bridge, but I don't remember traveling across it. I hear it was really, really dicey. For one thing, the supports for the bridge, the ironwork or whatever you call it, was in the middle of the bridge, so the cars had to go straight and then swerve. May have been a lane through the middle of it too, but sometimes people would forget to swerve around and would impale their cars on the support of the bridge, which I'm sure was fun because, you know, heading over to the airport, Zona Rosa, it's northwest of here, but no, actually I'm about ready to end this. I get it. I'm going home. We got house guests coming over, which we're gonna try and socially distance and wear masks and things like that. Good luck to us. But I've gone to the end of are so good, and the people that are coming over, I think, are safe too. There are actually people who, one of them works in medicine, so it better be safe. The other one works at a casino, so ow. I think that's the hardest part of the whole beer flu situation, is like trying to stay separated from people, as you know. Just really, really difficult. You're in Lakeland, Florida. Lakeland, Lakeland. I have family who lives in Florida. I have family who lives in Vero Beach, Miami. One who I think lives in the Tampa area, and where else do they live? Fort Lauderdale. All up and down the East Coast. Side streets that just keep my momentum going, and I'll make it. But not too much momentum, or I'll spin out or go straight into somebody's house. Between Tampa and Orlando. We visited Tampa in 2010. We went to the what's the name of that town? Sarasota, to visit the. We were told that the really something, which it turned out it was actually pretty good. We enjoyed it. Well, all right. I've got to sign off. So thank you, everybody.